Kanat, I understand Kanat's writing up his doctoral research through OCMS, again, looking at how to deeply indigenize or contextualize the biblical narrative, the gospel story, into the heart worldview of his people, the local people there in Kyrgyzstan. He's the principal of the United Theological Seminary in Bishkek and pastors a local church as well, and has many years of practical training, teaching, and mentoring through a long-standing work with the student fellowship movement, as well as Langham preaching. And I saw you here at one point. Can you unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and take the time here, take the floor? Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to represent my country. I was born and I grew up in Kyrgyzstan, and I became a believer in 2005 through the ministry of IFES. And for many years, I served as a for IFES. And since last year summer, I started serving as the seminary as a principal of the seminary in Bishkek. It's called a United Theological Seminary, and I think I see some people who are connected to my world of IFES and OCMS and even our current seminary. So good to see you all. To prepare for this short presentation, I decided to talk to some of the pastors that I know and kind of try to convey directly from their point of view about what they think is their needs. And I try to kind of present them in a more systematized way. So as I said, I'm from Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan is located in Central Asia, which was part of Soviet Union until 30 years ago. And Kyrgyzstan is a very small landlocked country with about 7 million people, and 90% of the population are Muslim. About 6% are Russian Orthodox Church, and less than 1% are Protestant evangelical Christians. And this 1% has been mostly growing since the independence from Soviet Union. So we have about 30 years of history as a local church, and with some churches being present for over 100 years. So it's not all a new experience. So when I spoke with different pastors about their training and equipment needs, they most often they start from where they are at. So that's where I would like to start. And before we go there, I would like to start with a story. There's a very famous, well-known story. It's called The First Teacher, and it was written by Chingiz Aytmatov, a prominent Kyrgyz novelist that I'm studying as part of my PhD research. And in this story, we learn about a young communist teacher who comes back, I think, after the war to his home town, to his village, and he comes back and he becomes the very first teacher in their village. And he basically teaches people how to read, how to write, because that's the only thing he knows. And he encounters this young girl who has a lot of potential, a lot of future, but she lives in a very traditional Kyrgyz community. So the whole story is all about how he struggles to help this young girl to free herself from the sort of quote unquote cage of traditionalism, patriarchal structure, and how she can go to the city, get her education, and have a brighter future. And then many years later, she comes back, a very successful scholar. She studies all the way to something similar to PhD level. She comes back to her village and she realizes that she doesn't fit in her community anymore. And she tells her story, but she leaves her village with a very bittersweet feeling that what she lost in trying to gain education. And as you think carefully about this story, it's a cautionary tale with the main message of warning against a one-sided view towards education or training or the local culture or local context. Because the story tries to say there's value in trying to preserve connection to both your original context and what you get through education and training. And I think for us today from this story, as I was thinking, I think we can glean this lesson. Any training, especially that was conceived from outside the context, need to allow space for the local recipient to shape the content and format and delivery and evaluation. Because in the story, we understand that they needed someone like this first teacher to bring the idea of what education brings them. He needed to give them initial training, initial education, but then he didn't give her a choice whether to stay or how to use this education or what to do with her life. He decided her entire future. And I think any training needs to be designed in a way that at a certain level, there's a space for recipients to give their input. So the current state of many pastors, as I spoke with them, they all start with where they are at right now. They don't start with what they are missing. It's mostly, this is where we are now. And most of them are spiritually, emotionally, and physically depleted. They're burdened with leadership challenges, financial challenges, and ongoing pressure of living in a majority Muslim society. They lead based on their first initial training, like as we heard from previous presentation, we have the same problem of pastors receiving their initial training, but they do not continue growing or updating their skills, or especially their biblical knowledge or biblical theology stays the same for many years. Their personal, spiritual, and family life is often hidden. It's not my evaluation, it's their evaluation. And if it's not hidden, then they're full of issues. And training that they mostly receive could be described as on-the-job training. Well, he was the only one who agreed to be a pastor, or he was the only one who was ready. And I just learned as I went how to lead, how to preach, how to pastor a church, or I learned from someone, maybe a missionary or previous pastor, and they just trained by someone's example. Most have no or poor secular higher education, which makes any highly academic theological education irrelevant to them because they don't have the foundation before they entered Christian ministry. They do not see how going and getting a formal degree is helpful to them. And I think that's a very good indication for us as we design our programs. And as I thought about their needs, I divided them into three different categories, roughly called head, heart, and hands. So in the area of knowledge, they want to have the ability to understand God's word deeply on their own. It's not, I think as we already mentioned, there's no lack of content. There's no lack of lectures and books and trainings about the Bible and its content, but they say we would like to read it and be able to understand its deeper meaning on our own, not in a training setting. Another thing that they often mention is prayer. The role of prayer is weakening.
Merci beaucoup
So
la parole.
maybe there's a
Cette
theology of
formation est vraiment d'une importance très capitale.
the
You
questions
know,
that I think they want to ask is prayer a solution to all their problems? Maybe they need to pray harder when prayer seems not enough, or yeah, why prayer life is weakening. So these are the questions they asked, and understand how they can help each other even before seeking outside help. I think this is one of the biggest issues in our context is whenever there's a problem, step number one is let's find a training. Let's find, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, my computer locked out. Yeah, and so that's another thing I think that we can address is how they can learn to look for solutions locally before they start looking for solutions from outside. The second category is heart renewal of their love or zeal for God's word. It was mentioned a lot that they would like to have this yearning or zeal for God's word. Renewal of desire to learn, especially among experienced pastors. They understand they need to update their skills, their knowledge, but they seem to have lost this desire to learn. And I guess we can see some of the reasons for that. And character growth or spiritual formation seems to be a very important topic that they mention. And often they say they're lonely, they don't have a mentor, they don't have a coach, and they need a lot of counseling. And I think before they can offer these to others, they say, I need counseling myself. How to develop a healthy rhythm of Sabbath rest. That's something that is now being talked about when resources are so limited to this. So our pastors never talked about rest until probably a couple of years ago. And this is something that they started asking. We need to learn to rest. How can we do it? And what is a retreat? Retreat is something new for us, a recent trend. And finally, hand skills, basic Bible study skills. That's what they want, improvement of their preaching skills, and how to lead in a context of constant financial and human resource constraints. So how to work with teams and lead them, how to raise up new leaders and plan for succession. And often they think bivocational skills or having business skills can help them to generate extra income. So we already talked about sustainability earlier. And these are some of my concluding remarks. I think whatever we do in terms of training pastors, the first principle I think is we need to meet them where they are now, listen to them and understand their context, their situation, and respond to them first. I think that's what I took for myself is if they're needing healing, counseling, rest, some other ongoing issue, I think our training needs to respond to that as well. We can't just say, well, I'm here just to give you knowledge, go find healing somewhere else. And that speaks to my next point where I talk about a holistic approach. And as I started in the beginning, invite their input into solutions to their training needs. Because often as a local Christian, I'm not really confident to say, this is what I need, because I'm used to being told, this is what you need. I have this great program and you need it, it will help you. Try in your context. Very few people ask me, okay, what do you need? Help me shape the training that I'm bringing by giving your input. And I think that also needs to be demonstrated, modeled, so they see, oh, my opinion matters in this training. And another thing that I took for myself is any training design should be a long-term, relational, process-oriented, and holistic as much as it's realistic to organize, so that, you know, head, heart, and hand are addressed. And I think constant evaluation of our training, how it's affecting the local context beyond our target group. I think we should be aware of the effects of our training to the wider, probably, context, not just to the people who are directly receiving our training. And finally, I think prioritizing locally replicable models of training is very important. Any training that we bring, we should ask, can they eventually reproduce themselves without my help, without my input? Can it be reproduced locally with the resources they have? And physical presence is more important than online existence in our context. A lot of people say, why do you need a building for our seminary? Why can't you just be an online school? And I say, if we remove our building, then the government, the local society, everyone will think that we don't exist because we're such a small community. We need a physical presence. And I think that speaks to many of the other things that we do as a local church. We need to show our presence whenever we can. So sorry, I went, I think, a bit more than I was given. Thank you for your attention.
Very rich. Thank you, Kanat. We look forward to that. There's a lot of people clapping in the room, so it's been a wonderful thing.